Let's go! Are you kidding me? LSU gets a nice rule change in its favor as the NCAA is really shaking things up with two massive changes to the sport that we love called college freaking football. So let's dive right into it. The first rule change, FBS coaches can now sign as many players as they want as long as they stay at or under the 85 total scholarship limit, according to the NCAA, and this from Nicole Auerbach. What that means is LSU or just any school can sign as many players as they want as long as they stay under 85 or below scholarships. That is absolutely insane, and it is really good news for LSU. So, as many of you know that follow recruiting, each and every year, you are only allowed to sign 25 players, or at the very least, that was the case before this last year when they added an additional 7 players intended for transfer portal slots. Now, did I think we would ever get to the point where teams could sign as many players as they absolutely want? I did not think that this would be the case, and I do think it could create an absolutely insane atmosphere throughout college football where coaches don't have to worry about over-offering kids. Now, they would have to worry about their total scholarships, but there could always be a bump and nudge, as many of you know, as processing that can happen where players that are on the current roster could get a wink, wink, we don't want you anymore, and that opens up a very valuable roster slot. So that is going to make this college football sport that was already cutthroat even more cutthroat, and this means as a player, when you get to that school, you better start being able to perform pretty quickly, or that's going to happen. I think this will lead to more players getting pushed out or finding a new home relatively quickly. However, overall, I do think this is a very good thing for Brian Kelly, considering that Brian Kelly has a total roster rebuild that is currently underway. Now, he's already done a good job with the transfer portal, getting the roster numbers over 80 when the bowl game featured only 39 scholarship players, but still, there's still a lot of facelifting that needs to be done over the next couple of years. And one more thing that this really helps out with LSU is, as many of you know, Louisiana is an extremely deep state when it comes to talent. Let's just say you have a really strong read or a feel for the class of 2023. You can take as many Louisiana prospects as you want. Remember, that is the first major rule change that has happened today in college football. And the second here, via CBS's Shehan Jayaraja, a good friend of mine, divisions are no longer required for FBS football conferences, freeing up scheduling and title game models. What this essentially means is you now, as a conference, can schedule your divisions any way that you want. The SEC in basketball has already gotten rid of its division model as well, but nevertheless, we are focusing just mostly on LSU here. This is huge for LSU, and you got to stick with me while I explain this. And I've done it a lot on the channel. This is actually something I've been passionate about since before my Bleacher Report days. I think the division model and the way that the SEC schedule has been shaped up has always been unfair to two schools in the SEC West, LSU and Auburn. Because of the way the cross-division rival model works, is that every year, of course, you play your 7 SEC schools in your division, your other 6 schools in your division. You would play one permanent team from the East and a rotating door of the other 6 teams from the East in that other slot. Every year, LSU and Auburn had to play Florida and Georgia as their permanent cross-division rival, whereas other schools like Alabama and Texas A&M, for instance, got to play Tennessee and South Carolina every year. And while both of those schools now are in a positive trajectory, for over a decade, both of those schools, outside of 3 really good years from Steve Spurrier with Clowney, those 3 11-win seasons, those schools have mostly just been mediocre or worse, whereas Florida and Georgia have, for the most part, been no worse than a top 25 program pretty much each and every season. So, as Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC, that was already probably going to have to force the SEC to switch up how they do their divisions and how they do their conferences. The bottom line, though, is this is really good if you're an LSU fan. You want a more balanced schedule. You want more schedule diversity. That's just better for you, even if you're not an LSU fan and you're just a fan of college football. You want more variance in the schedule. It helps you out. College football is a sport where the schedule matters more than any other sport. It is also the sport where the teams you play just happen to be pretty much the same spot on the schedule each and every year. As many of you know, LSU and Alabama play every year early in November. I don't know how much that's going to change. I don't know exactly what's going to work. Is the SEC going to go to a pod system? Is it going to go to you only play these two teams every year and then there's just a heavy rotation? Once again, comment down below. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. What is the best version of a model for a schedule for the SEC? We'll see. We honestly don't know at this point, but what this ruling from the NCAA basically says is it's going to have a laissez-faire type of attitude for how you want to actually structure your conference. I do think this is a good thing for the sport. I like this actually better than the 85 scholarship limit rule because I believe schedule structure is the most important thing for a sports league to succeed. It is the most influential thing on pretty much all sports leagues, and I do think a schedule facelift was something that really needed to happen in the SEC. Boom, I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Okay, so let's go on ahead and show you what a potential pod system could look like if the SEC decides to go to 9 conference games. Just last week, we started talking about it in our schedule preview, including when the actual best year for Brian Kelly to make a run for the college football playoff. And let me give you a little hint. It is actually not this year, but the next. It's actually year 2. That is going to be a championship window for Brian Kelly. You can see why in the top right corner of your screen. I'll also link the video down below. But as you guys see, this is what I think the 16-team pod system would look like if the SEC decided to go to a pod system. And essentially that would mean you would play 3 permanent teams each and every year. And in LSU's pod, I have Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, Auburn, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina. And this is what I think a schedule could look like for LSU, where every year you're playing, obviously, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M every year, and you do a rotating door of home and away on every other year with each and every other team in the conference. So with the old schedule, you would only play teams from the SEC East once every 6 years. That wasn't your permanent cross-division rival, obviously, outside of if you got to the SEC championship game. And that, of course, was, once again, Florida. So you would only see other SEC teams once every 6 years. With this schedule format that we have listed for you here, you would get to play each and every team every other year, and you would get to visit every SEC stadium once every 4 years, if that makes sense. Where it used to be your permanent cross-division rival, you would only visit their away stadium once every 12 years. Now, once again, that's a lot of math, and if you didn't know that already, it could be very complicated. If you want me to explain that even further, feel free to comment down below. So once again, this is just a mock schedule where, of course, you're playing Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M, and obviously you're alternating home and away with those schools. And as you can see here, you would play Florida year 1 at home, Georgia year 1 at the road, year 2 at the road, Florida year 3 at home or away, and then Georgia at home. So I know that's a little complicated, but that's just how I have it, hypotheticalized. down here. Then, of course, I have some other stuff down here. I would like LSU to play Louisiana Group of 5 school every year and a non-conference Power 5 school every year. Obviously, that's already set up on LSU's schedule. In fact, they play 2 in 2024 with USC and UCLA. But obviously, I think non-conference Power 5 games is something that excites each and every one of us. And then, of course, just a non-conference, non-Power 5 game, whatever you want that game to be. So this is just a mock schedule that I've already done a video on this when the SEC realignment was already announced, but still there's going to be so many different variations. I'm not saying this is the best one. I'm not saying that it is for sure that if the SEC did pods, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M would be in their pod. It's up in the air, but we'll see what happens. Nevertheless, if you are a college football fan, we can all have our own opinions about this, but I believe mine is the correct one. It is better to have more schedule variants. So, obviously, comment down below your thoughts on today's video, your thoughts on the new rule changes, and let me know if you think that this actually does benefit LSU. I think it does benefit Brian Kelly because he has so much more rebuilding he has to do with the roster, but we'll see what happens. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! So I know we had a running back deep dive scheduled for today, but as you guys know, if there's a big breaking news story such as this one, we tend to focus on that. And that running back deep dive will come out pretty soon. In fact, I'm still working on it, and it's basically trying to predict which running backs are actually the ones that succeed at LSU. So that's coming up. That's why you got to subscribe, ring the bell, like this video so you don't ever miss any of the videos. So floating in your face is that video I was referencing just a minute ago. And tonight, we're doing some carne asada tacos. Let's go!